And that's urbansurvival.com.
Urbansurvival.com. And I gather, talks with you quite often and summarizes some of your latest data on his website. And you have a growing dome. I noticed the pictures of that, too.
Yeah, I was just
me a bit about
uploading new pictures. Oh, I built a dome a while back because the data indicated that we were going to have severe conditions that would impact the ability to grow food where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And so it just made sense to get really serious about it and get a structured greenhouse, and a dome is the cheapest, most effective way to cover any amount of space.
Well, in our county, we have a lot of dope growers. This is like the dope growing capital of the world. So,
congratulations.
Greenhouses and hydroponics are sort of major industry in Nevada County.
Yeah, hydroponics not so much up here because of the mold issues.
Oh yeah, you're in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, what's in our future? When I talked to you last time, I said, are we heading toward an infrastructure in this country comparable to Angola? Is that the direction we're going?
Part of there's some real data to suggest that our economics are going to be much more like Zimbabwe. That we're going to hit hyperinflation.
Right.
And that hyperinflation is going to be very, very caustic to the entire monetary system and to all the digital dollar stuff. It's going to really ramp up starting October 26th of this year, although we expect the visibility level, that is to say, when it reaches the notice of the middle class, so to speak, about November 5th or 6th. But from November of this year, basically early November of this year, until very early November 2010, will be a period of time where we're going to have Drano going through our financial system from the hyperinflation that's caused. What will remain is going to be anybody's guess. But I don't think the dollar will remain. We're really pretty confident that as of, say, sometime this winter, mostly the dollar won't be used as an international reserve currency anymore, and that'll have huge impacts on us, including amplifying the hyperinflation.
You say this winter, you're talking about February, January 2010?
Correct. Actually, December, early December, so a little bit before the actual onset of winter. So, say, from December of 2009 through January, February of 2010 will be the next big dumping phase of the dollar as international reserve currency.
And what's that going to do to the guy on the street?
Well, here's our situation. We've got a bunch of little green pieces of paper, or red, or whatever color they are now. Let's just say $20 bills, right? And now it's okay. You can go on over and you can swap the $20 bills and more or less a quid pro quo, $1, 34 cents for a euro, that kind of thing. Well, in December and thereafter, all through next year, we're going to get to the point where in order to buy those goods that we cannot manufacture, that we're dependent upon, oil and everything else, we're going to have to pony up a lot of these dollars to buy real currencies in order to be able to buy those, because nobody's going to want to accept dollars. And so we're actually seeing the potential, not to say it'll develop this way, but the language suggests that people will be talking about it this way for sure, of $200 and $300 and $400 a barrel oil.
Well, you mentioned in one of your newsletters, I think the most recent one, that around that date of October 26th, Israel would attack Iran.
That's the indication we have now, yes. That at some point from 26th on, an international crisis develops. That international crisis gets mixed into a huge muddied stew of all kinds of nasty weather globally, as well as this economic crash. So it's all happening all at once, and it's going to cause some real severe hardships, and the indications are quite clear so far. We don't have any new data to conflict it, that Israel will indeed attack Iran and will cause everybody on the planet some real misery.
I know that the Obama government has sent envoys to Israel to beg them not to attack Iran, and I'm just wondering, on your spiders or your bots that go out and get all this data, there is news right now about the U.S., going and pleading with Israel not to attack Iran. Would that show up as an attack on Iran, or would that show up?
No, we actually saw that language about 6 to 8 months ago manifesting for this time. So we're still on that temporal marker trail that leads to Israel attacking Iran in the fall.
Now, when you see one of these futures, is there any way for us as people being forewarned to do anything about it?
I don't know. If you're asking me if time is mutable, I don't know. Can we change this? I believe we can, but we would need a certain amount of emotional energy, I think, to overcome the emotional trends that are there, based on a just a mathematical approach to things. Now, is there anything we can do to prepare as individuals? Certainly. There were dozens of people, lots of people knew World War II was coming. And I have a personal example where this fellow knew that war was coming and had been through World War I. He knew what the restrictions were going to be around here, knew it would be worse. So before World War II broke out, he went around and bought up every tire he could get and shoved them all into his garage. And he was
the rubber king of the Northwest.
You got it. He was retailing tires for years when no one else could get them. So, and I know a guy who did the same thing with toilet paper. And, that's not uncommon in military people. But they know it's coming and they do things. Now, on an individual level, yeah, you can do all different kinds of things. The nature of the attacks and the warfare that we're seeing lead me to believe that the whole thing is a giant fiasco on all sides.
It wouldn't seem good for anybody, would it?
No, but also beyond that, a whole series of screw-ups compound each other in the sense that the Israelis screw up and they attack Iran. They further screw up and they're not prepared for the devastating losses they face in the actual attack. Further in the details, it suggests that they use some new kind of weird weapon that vaporizes a nuke plant or a nuclear storehouse or something in such a way that vast clouds of radioactive crud are thrown up into the atmosphere and they circle around the world for years, causing misery and death. So much so that current allies of Israel, such as India, immediately start, because of the millions that die and are sickened, immediately jump on the bandwagon, and everybody holds a giant conference over the course of about 10 to 12 days. And within the data, we're getting into interpretation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my monkey mind says that, well, I could interpret this data to suggest that this international conference is hastily called, and Obama is summoned, and he is told, you eradicate Israel or we will, and essentially by the rest of the planet. And oh, by the way, the rest of the planet says if we have to do it, we'll take out the U.S. too. And so, we're faced with sort of a Hobbes choice there, right, between the devil and the nasty Zionists. And at that point, it's anybody's kiss as to what happened, what actually goes on. Now, that is speculation on my part, because it could be interpreted that this delay is a period of time where people try and calm the waves of anger that are going around the planet, and that fails, and then there's this attack. Basically, there's an attack by Israel against Iran, some major nasties for the people of the planet, a period of 7 to 10 days in which there is no retaliation to speak of, and then there's an overwhelming attack that just literally glazes the place.
Wow. It's the bottom of the hour. Time flies. It's 12:30 here in Nevada City. You're listening to KVMR 89.5 FM. Okay, back to the real world. Or the real world as seen,
as seen by our screwy process.
Seen by your process. Okay, if Israel attacks Iran, that will paralyze any kind of oil or any kind of commerce coming from the Middle East to the United States.
That happens beforehand. But you're quite correct. That finishes the global economy and pretty much puts the cap on it and screws it in real tight. No, but in our data, it shows that from July 15th until about August 16th, in the background on the planet's level of abstractions upon abstractions that we call the banking and financial system, we have what we know as derivatives going into a meltdown.
Right.
Now, bear in mind, derivatives, of course, are notational valued at something like 6 or 7 or 20 times. No one really knows how much.
More than all the money in the planet.
Correct. All of the money in the planet. In order to satisfy them, we'd all have to get money from Mars or some other planet for 4 or 5 or 6 years and sell everything we own in order just to pay these things off. And so they go bluey on us over a course of about 30 days.
Why can't the powers that be just say derivatives don't count? Just wipe them out.
Well, basically, that's what's going to happen. But the problem is that there's so much tied to them. And they're tied back to things like interest rates, even levels of government employment in certain countries. They're tied to soybeans and orange crops and all different kinds of weird things, all cross-tied together. And their nominal use was to help in financing this. And so the reason the government can't basically do that is because they've been such a huge promoter of the thing. It's like the situation of someone who's just been, pumping the racetrack like mad, saying, oh, it doesn't matter anymore, and don't come here and waste your money on this particular form of gambling. It just will not happen. The powers that be find themselves over the course of this next year and a half or so, constrained into ever tighter circles based on their former activities. So, for instance, imagine the impact on the planet of the powers that be, and I'm talking the Obama administration as well as, any other administration you care to name, doing something atypical, out of the ordinary. What would be the impact on the United States if Obama came out today and said something out of the ordinary, like, we're going to release all of our records on all this stuff, and by the way, here's a picture of a dead alien that they showed me at such and such a place. And we've got, and he comes on out and starts talking about, I've personally seen spaceships, we personally have anti-gravity and free energy and so on. Vast quantities of revolution around the planet just almost instantly in terms of thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely unlikely to happen, but it would take that level of magnitude of stuff in order to get rid of the derivatives. They would have to come out and essentially declare a jubilee, because so many people owe so many other people back and forth, and we're in the middle of it.
I think I might have asked you about that last time you were on. What about a jubilee? It was a biblical thing. Why not do it again?
Right. Actually, it turns out that we'll probably be close to that in circumstance in 2013.
We're going to make it past 2012 then. That implies.
Well, some people are. At least the data seems to suggest that. But it's going to be a real tough few years. If we're correct, the warfare stuff can really spiral out of control. And then we also have this weird stuff and I'm talking